You are now tuning in to the Going North podcast with your host, best-selling author, professional speaker, and member of the John Maxwell team, Dominic Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday, we're going to hear the voice of a different author sharing their gifts, stories, and expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we're bringing some fabulous humans from across the globe. Today is no different. Heck, come again. Today is a special occasion, episode 300 of the Going North podcast. And my goodness, it's been 3+ years, over 350 plus authors. And we have one heck of a guest for you today. My goodness, probably one of my favorite business women walking the planet, one of my favorite fempreneurs walking on the planet today, because she has a heart of gold and she has done a lot. Because my goodness, she's a book publisher, a former sergeant of U.S. Marines, and she did that for 6 years, a best-selling author, educator, mother, ordained interfaith minister, and a visionary businesswoman. So, my goodness, this woman is a Jill of all trades, and Jack has to step out the way. So let's give it up for the fabulous Miss AP herself, Reverend Ariel Patricia. How you doing today, ma'am?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna record that intro, and I'm gonna ask every host going forward to do that intro. That was the most fabulous intro I've ever heard. So I'm doing fantastic, Dom, and thank you. And congratulations on 300 episodes. That is phenomenal.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's been uphill, but the good uphill.
Hmm. Well, it's a journey, right? I mean, it's a journey, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Oh, yeah, you could say that again. And you've been on one heck of a journey yourself, because I've been reading some of your stories from probably all four of the books that you've been featured in. And my goodness, you have one heck of a life. And the good news is they ain't even all over yet.
And we're just getting started. We are just getting started, my friends. So it's fun. It's fun. I don't know that along the whole journey, I would have said, oh, this is fun. Sometimes I would say, what the heck is happening? And, shake my fist at the universe. But no, I'd have to say generally it's pretty fun, and it's just becoming more and more fun as we go along.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Fun on the bun, indeed. And there's like so many things to unpack. So, my goodness, what was probably interesting to me at first, the fact that now that you're being a book publisher, helping folks get their sacred stories heard, like you yourself, you didn't like writing that much at first.
No, I didn't like writing at all. It's so funny. No, I know. Yeah, so if we just dial way back about 9 years ago, yeah, I was an educator, and being an author was the furthest thing from my mind. A book publisher, I mean, I would have probably laughed and thought that's a grand idea. But as I was on my journey, and I was actually seeking spiritual experiences, I was looking for deeper answers. I had one of those life events that many people are having that caused a lot of pain, a lot of questions I needed answered, and I didn't have the answers for. And so I became a spiritual seeker, which led me to go into seminary. I spent 2 years in seminary. And as you said, I'm an ordained interfaith minister. And along the way, they say, be careful what you wish for, because you may just receive it. Um,
Yep.
I opened up and said, I need answers, I need help. And saying that to my angels, and the animals came. The animals came. I didn't even know what was happening at first, but I was having all sorts of incredible experiences with physical animals, which I found out later, or realized later, were animal totems. They were, symbolic of what was happening in my life. And it was one of the first ways of the divine communication as it was coming through. And what happened one night is, again, unbeknownst to me, most times I'm just a spectator, it seems like, in this journey, more than a participant. But I was sleeping, and I was woken up, but it was kind of that in between sleep and wake state where I knew I was sleeping, but I wasn't fully asleep. And I was watching myself, and what I saw was, I describe it as like the top of my head was lifted off, kind of like one of those pots that have the handles that are attached where you can lift the handle, but the top of the pot is still on there. And so I saw literally the top of my head kind of opening up, leaning back, and all these like numbers and symbols and things just started flowing into my head. And I'm watching this kind of download, I guess is what people call it. I didn't know what was happening. And I was fascinated. But as I was watching it, I saw the entire first book that I was to write basically being downloaded into me. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And the next morning, this, of course, happened the way the universe, divine timing. I was an educator. We were going on winter break. It happened the night before my first day of winter break. So I had 5 days that I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to do much of anything except kind of be a mom, but my kids were teenagers. And I literally sat for 5 days and I wrote the first draft of my first book. It all just came pouring out.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And an interesting book that it is because my goodness, you had encounters with bats and toads of all animals.
Bats and toads and mice and dogs and owls and all kinds of, and all of them real, none of them in the dream state, none of them in the meditative state, and four of them in my bedroom, so uninvited. But yes. Yeah, no, it was really, it's really pretty magical and beautiful, when again, when I think when I could step back enough from the pain, or I could move through the pain enough to kind of see with a little bit of a deeper understanding, see with, I spent early years, the first year as a radio host on an internet radio station, and I called my show Spiritual Lens, because that's kind of like how things started opening up, and I was inviting people to kind of look through their spiritual lens at the world and seeing things maybe a little bit differently than we normally see things. Because I was, and it's really a beautiful, magical world when we can do that.
Oh yeah, you can definitely say that again. And I feel like the world is actually starting to become a little more open to that because a lot of classic traditional things like the classic religious denominations, like a lot of folks are starting to really fall away from that and really do some more research and exploration for themselves. And heck, it's pretty interesting how there's a lot of interfaith ministers out there. Like I didn't even know that was a thing a few years ago until actually diving in. So my goodness, so what led you to actually take that route? Because I know you had a Roman Catholic background at first.
Yeah, yeah. I was raised a nice little Roman Catholic Italian girl in the Northeast of the United States. And that was wonderful. And that was really the foundation of my faith. I have a very deep faith. And none of my experiences really take away from the foundations of my faith. But what I realized when I was, kind of in that heap on my bedroom floor, trying to work through the pain and saying, what the hell is happening and who am I? I don't even recognize this person I am right now. I needed some deeper answers. And my faith really wasn't enough, because it really was about understanding me, and not necessarily me being loved by some higher power or saved by something or whatever. It was really me understanding the essence of who I am and my role in everything. And for me, that was a spiritual journey. However, I am also an eternal student. And for me, it's also very important that I have a framework or an understanding, at least of kind of the playground I'm entering into. And so I I did, an interfaith community actually started in my town, and I became familiar with them. And it was through them because I said, I need to understand what else is out there. And so we in interfaith seminary, you study all faith-based traditions, or the major ones that are followed, and many of the spiritual traditions. So we studied Christianity, we studied Buddhism, Hinduism, we studied African traditions, we studied, you know, different spiritual traditions. We studied them all and we practiced them as well. And so I did that because I wanted to kind of understand the larger landscape so that I could figure out where I could go from there. But at least I had a broad base to stand on.
Ah, yes, indeed. A broad base, indeed. And it's great that you really had that foundation of faith and that it actually became stronger over the years. And that's one heck of a awesome thing. So, what's probably been one of the biggest challenges you had to face going into the entrepreneurial space being faith based?
Yeah. Wow. Well, so with for me, I was and I know my it's interesting because I've talked to so many people over the years now, and I know that my experience is not unique to me. But at the time, I was just kind of flying blind, or I was kind of jumping off the proverbial cliff, with my heart wide open. And so as these spiritual experiences were happening, and as I was writing my first book, and I was an educator, but I was finding that I was so all in with what was happening and trying to figure out and understand these deeper experiences, or understanding me more. I couldn't do both things. I couldn't have a full-time job and have these experiences. And so I took the proverbial leap off the cliff, and I left my career, and I self-published my first book. And I just thought, well, this is it. This is going to change the world. And I was going to have Oprah calling me, give her a couple weeks, and I really didn't have a plan. Didn't have a plan, but what I realized later is I had it all planned out, is what I thought was going to happen. And so one of the harder things, or the experiences that I had when I kind of jumped off that cliff, and then, the phone didn't ring and Oprah wasn't calling, and I was like, what the heck is happening? Like, this is how this is supposed to happen. And I went out there, and I was just kind of seeking more and more. One, not only was I confused and upset and felt very disillusioned that, the world didn't come banging on my door, but also I became susceptible, because I was so open-hearted, to some less than conscious people in the consciousness world who were selling me different things. And I spent a lot of money, Dom, that I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? But I wasn't thinking. I was leading with my heart. I was wide open, and I was raw, and I was in pain, but I felt this passion for what I was doing. So what was the hardest part? The hardest part was kind of licking my wounds, regrouping, figuring out why my plan didn't work the way I thought, and also paying attention to the choices I was making and the people I was working with. And actually, our book publishing company, Sacred Stories Publishing, exists today as a response to having more opportunities to have publishers act in integrity and create opportunities for people to share their books, because I didn't have that experience initially in the world of consciousness.
Woohoo! And congratulations indeed. If I'm not mistaken, it's been successfully up and running for 6 years now, right? Sacred Stories Publishing.
Publishing is going on 5 years, going on five, but the larger media company, yes, it's a little over six. Oh, actually, almost. Oh, yeah, a little over six for the media company.
Woohoo! So 7-pack business abs on the way. That's what I'm talking about. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations indeed. And it was really a testament to being able to transform your pain into power, because that's one heck of a heavy blow to really just blow a lot of money, thousands of dollars, and especially after coming off a divorce and being in probably one of the most painful times in your life raising teenage daughters. And after that, and that probably took a heavy hit. And now you're in a place where you're helping others to not make that same mistakes. So, got to commend you for that and being able to keep it going strong as the way it has been going strong. And it just seems like exponential growth is still on the horizon.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started, my friend. We have actually a couple quite a few expansions underway and coming up. So stay tuned. And yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey. But you know what has kept me going through all of it really was a deeper knowing that there's a deeper plan in place, and that I not that, working 9 to 5 or having a regular job or any of that is not incredible, because I feel that the idea is not that people have to have spiritual careers, but that people need to bring their spirituality into all aspects of their life. So it's not about, well, everybody has to do something in the world of consciousness, but please be conscious in all that you do, right? But the idea is what kept me going was this inner knowing based on the experiences I was having and the different things that were happening, was that I just knew that that I needed to keep going, because there was more for me to do. I wasn't done yet with this journey the Sacred Stories has evolved into.
Ah, yes, indeed. And speaking of evolving, is there going to be another solo project from yours truly?
Oh, there's a lot of them. There are a lot of them. They're coming. So, yes, and I will ask you to have me come back on when I'm able to announce a few big announcements. But there's quite a few things that are actually underway as we speak that are really exciting, really exciting.
Woohoo, sweet. So, are any of them gonna mention any of your experience in the military? Because it's not every day you meet a wonderful lady who spent 6 years in the Marines, no less, and even better, being a sergeant in the Marines. So that was like that. I'm sure there's got to be some stories from that that can inspire some ladies today who may be thinking of joining the service, or may have no choice and they may join the service, or just being just ladies, period, to be inspired. Heck, even men too, to be inspired from what you learn from that, and probably still have some of that strength within you today to keep going on top of everything else you do.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, really interesting. Well, I have to say that the Marines was, yeah, is it was kind of an incredible experience. And I spent 6 years, and at 24, because I was in from 18 to 24, and at 24 I knew I was up for staff, and they said, if you re-enlist, like, staff is yours, staff sergeant is yours. But I knew if I re-enlisted then that I was halfway to 20, and then I'd be in for 20, because what's the point? Am I going to get out at, like, then my late 20s seemed like I'd be ancient, and God forbid 38, like 38, I would have been already retired over 20 years now if I had actually stayed in the Marines, which is just mind blowing to me. But so it was an incredible experience. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be any projects that kind of speak to that, but I will tell you that part of my strength of knowing that I can just keep moving forward definitely came from the evidence I received doing it in the Marine Corps, and I think that that's something that, hopefully is something that can help others. That when things start to get a little tough, you're feeling a little beaten down, or you're really unsure, remind yourself of the times or the experiences when you kept moving forward, when you made it through, when things were tough and you did it anyway. And that's where you draw your strength from. And so I do that to this day. I'll still draw my strength knowing that I have that Marine Corps sergeant in me, even if she's in a puddle of tears on her floor, she's there, and I'm going to pull her back out, and we'll move forward.
Sweet. Camouflage ahoy. That's what I'm talking about. Oh man. So since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question that you wish you be asked more often when you're in the guest seat of the interview side of the game?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question, Dom. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that with my guests. I'm going to put that back on them. And I think that the biggest thing that I always would like people to know, more than anything, is that their experiences are valid, and that at the heart of everything, we are spiritual beings. We are. And these experiences that I had with the animals and then with the angels, my second book is Angels and Past Life Regressions and astral travel, and really some really cool stuff. And it continues. I could fill hours telling you the experiences I'm having today, the one I had yesterday, that some people would say, wow, that's really kind of crazy, incredible. Like, how did that happen? And I would say that that's normal, that is what our normal can be, because we are truly souls. We are the, souls in a human body is true. And so I would say to people to embrace the experiences and to invite the experiences and to normalize the experiences as something that isn't this really super cool thing that happened to you once or twice, but a way that you can walk in the world when you really open up and lead from your heart and tune into the deeper essence of who you are.
Love it indeed. Love it indeed. Because it is so true. Because look, heck, even one of your book titles where it talks about how God is in the little things. Like it
Hmm.
don't have to go too deep at first. It's just taking that time to really be aware of what's around you and what messages may be sent to you directly from God Himself in the little things.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of it is just even just slowing down long enough to pay attention, and a lot of it might be like, well, that's just silly or that doesn't matter. But I pretty much every day I take a break and I walk over to a park near my home, and I just talk to the trees. I just, sometimes I'll just breathe with them, and sometimes I'll just look at them and I'll just kind of soak them in and I'll just listen. And other times, I'll just have full outright experiences with them. And, the life is all around us, and it doesn't have to take the form of just human life. And it's all right here for us. And so I would just invite people to just open a little wider, to just invite experiences that are for their highest and best, and listen, just listen and be. And it's kind of very cool. And if nothing else, it will give you that recentering. It will give you that energy that you need when you're like, what am I doing? Or this doesn't feel the best or whatever. You will receive what you need when you slow down and you just kind of listen and tune in a little bit.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right. I got to talk to them trees, indeed.
You do. They have a lot to say, that's for sure. But at the end, and the other end of the spectrum, honestly, I mean, people will, they've done studies, I mean, scientific studies, you walk in the forest, there's something called forest bathing now, right? That's this big health thing to do. And it's nothing new, it's something to be figured out, but trees emit a healing energy. Just being in their presence is healing to us. So even if you're not ready to have a conversation yet, go stand with them. Just go stand with them. And it's just kind of opening up. Really, Dom, what it is more is that opening up to the life that's all around us and not judging whether they're in human form or not. Open to the animals, open to the trees, open to the water, the wind. Just open up to the life around us. I think people will be just amazed and energized by what they receive.
Ah, yes, indeed. You could say that again because and you're so right about the whole forest bathing thing. Like it's not really anything new. It's just that we've been away from it for so long, been away from nature so long with all the technology and every other distraction on the planet that it's been there the whole time. We just have to be reconnected and re-invited to certain parts of nature.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they're waiting for us. They're right here. They're not going anywhere. They're very patient. Yeah, it is. And my first book, God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals, talks about that relationship through the animals. And then my second one is God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Golden Angels. And that is angels and astral travel and past life. But within there is also the greater relationship with kind of the unseen life that's around us. And some of that is nature. So it's all there and there's more. It's all there and there's more. We just have to tune back in.
Ah, yeah. That's right, folks. So put down the remote and change the real channel, the physical channel, y'all. Get in that nature. Find a tree. Give it a hug if you don't want to talk to it, or maybe just stand next to it. Maybe sit Indian cross leg style next to it, and then just look at it.
Yeah, I do. I do. And people walk by and sometimes people give me, they kind of look and I just smile and I just go back to what I'm doing and I don't really care, because I'm experiencing life and the life that's around me. And you know what the beautiful part about that, Dom, is that, people talk about oneness, they talk about unity consciousness, talk about how there's no separation. I mean, we really, it's just a sea of energy between us and everything. So even if we can't see it, there is absolutely no space between us and anything else around us because it's filled with energy, right? And so it's just a matter of, again, opening to possibilities that you might not have considered previously, and then being beautifully and magically and supported and surprised.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You can say that again. One of those pleasant surprises. And heck, even the powerful point before that is just not caring what other people think when it comes to doing something positive.
Hmm. Well, what's so funny and so interesting is that, like, even my first book, right? So God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals, right? So it's all about these visits, physical visits I received from animals, which were kind of like off the charts crazy, and I would say to the most part pretty unbelievable if you didn't experience it. And so again, I told you I grew up in the Northeast, and where I grew up is relatively conservative. And I had one thought of, I wonder what people will think. And then I thought, well, I don't really care, because it was just so powerful. But what happened was the response was beyond anything I could have imagined. I mean, people that I thought there's no way they'd get it, not only got it, read the book, and were asking me, hey, I saw this animal, such and such, and this happened. What does that mean? Or, hey, I saw this. And, like, totally, it allowed them to go, wait, I've had similar experiences, or wait, I'm noticing things I didn't notice before. And they were excited to talk about it. They weren't judging me like, oh, there's that, crazy lady who, has the bats in her bedroom. They were like, that's the coolest thing I ever read. Let me tell you what happened to me and what do you think about this? I got an email, I got a message the other day, another one about it. I mean, it's been years, but people that have read, my books through the years, they're still messaging me saying, could you tell me what this means? Because it's real life, it's real stuff. And I think when we can talk about it, when we can say, hey guys, like, we're spiritual, we are spiritual beings, we're souls, and there's so much beyond this three-dimensional world that we exist in, and it's right here available for us. When we can open up and say that with love and confidence, and not pride in a bad way, but in a way that you're not apologizing, right? You don't have to explain and apologize anything. People relate, people appreciate it, because they're probably experiencing similar things, or they would like to, and this gives them an opportunity to have their own experiences, which I think is the greatest gift of all.
Ah, yeah. And it doesn't even have to be wrapped either.
No, it doesn't. It comes all wrapped in a big old bow of love and support.
Ah, good. I'm glad the bow is full of love and support.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the whole essence of the book, Crappy to Happy, the new one that we just published, that you're part of. Dom Brightman, which I'm very excited to say. And if you want, I can tell you what I love the most about your story in the book. But that's the essence of Copy to Happy, the new book, because it's people sharing their real, true life experiences. And that's where people meet us, right? They see ourselves, we see each other in our stories, in our emotions that the stories elicit, and we find our inspiration, we find our hope, we find our courage at that point of connection through story.
Ah, yes, indeed. You can say that again, indeed. Because Crappy to Happy, my goodness, still one of the best titles ever. Like, I get a chuckle every time I tell people about the book.
What's so funny about Crappy to Happy? And I'm so glad you said that because we decided on the title because we wanted to bring a little bit of, let people know that because the first book, Chaos to Clarity, had some really deep, incredible stories in it. But some people were like, well, I don't know. I kind of want to be a little more inspired. Like, I feel like I don't know if I can go into, the heartache and we're like, it's not heartache, it's the journey. And they're like, well, but just even the title, Chaos, like people were, I'm not really sure. So we're like, well, you know what? We want to just, let people know that we can enjoy the journey as well, even as you're moving through things or when you come out on the other side. And so Crappy to Happy was born. And some people love the title, Dom, and other people wrote us and said, I wanted to submit my story, but I don't feel like I don't like the title because I feel like you're making a joke of things and I don't, so I'm not submitting my story. And we're like, no, we're not making a joke of anything. Like it's really a very deep messages in the book. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, there's no joke making jokes of anything. It's still, I think, an incredibly powerful and honoring book of all the experiences. However, it's the message, the overriding message is one of joy. And when you go through experiences like this and you move into deeper knowing that you've made it and that you've been supported, that we tune into that joy, that knowing. And that's the message of the book, so.
Wow. I feel like those were trolls who said that because this seems so short sighted to me. Like, you're making fun of what? Really?
I know of all the things you want to complain about. And if you don't want to submit your story, don't submit it. But why do you have to tell me like why you don't want to submit it? It's kind of crazy, but I'm so glad you like it and I'm so glad you're a part of it.
Ah, yes, indeed. It's an honor to be a part of the book because that was one of my goals in the coming years to be part of a co-author project. And of all the folks who were doing them that I saw, you're definitely the easiest choice to make because of the professionality with book number one and the fact that you're gaining momentum and you do excellent work. So I was like, all right, let me be a part of somebody's doing something right.
Mm. We appreciate it. We do, and the we being my co-author Kat Kanavos and I, and when we received your story, we were like, oh my gosh, Dom submitted a story. We were just absolutely thrilled. And what I love about your story, do you want me to tell you what I love about your story?
Oh,
Um,
sure, go ahead.
right? Okay, so not to give away any like endings or whatever, but Dom has this great story called Some Gifts Are Wrapped in Adversity. And what I love about your story, Dom, is one, you wrote it, from a 21-year-old perspective, right? So this was crossing over your 21st birthday. And it was that story of kind of keep moving forward, right? Because you had a series of things that happened that, any one of them could just be reason to just not move forward. You know what I mean? So you had one thing happen, then you had another thing happen, you had another thing happen. And your story, one of the parts I love about it the most is that, your mom was saying you've come too far to give up now. And none of the things that happened were things you couldn't like so traumatic you couldn't recover from, but it was like, oh dear God, how many times am I going to get knocked on the head, right? And I think that that is so realistic of real life, where you're just like, I'm just trying to move forward, and I'm getting this setback or this setback or this setback, And it's easy to just be like, oh, forget it. Maybe this isn't for me. Oh, I don't, I'm not going to go on. And so it wasn't this like one major event that you had to move through, but a series of setbacks that were, significant, but setbacks, but you still moved through. And I loved that that was your story, because I feel that that's something that pretty much everybody who reads the book will say, oh, I can relate to that. I remember these experiences when I had them, and so I appreciated that different experience you brought.
Ah, thank you. Definitely honored indeed, and definitely so right. It's like, man, a series of events back to back. It's like, crap. Is it over yet? Can I get to that pot of gold already?
And do I really, am I going to keep moving forward? Right. Or damn it, maybe I'm just going to give up, maybe I'm just tired, or, whatever. Right. But you didn't. And your story is a beautiful example of just keep moving forward. And it's also a beautiful example of the power of support. And I love how you brought your mom into it, and what she told you about, you've come too far to give up now, and so keep moving forward. And I love that reminder. And so even if people listening, they don't have a mom that's going to step in and say you've come too far to give up now, remind yourself, remember where you've been, remember what you've done, and remind yourself you've come too far, and keep moving forward.
Amen indeed. Amen indeed. So, in speaking of forward, we're going to be going backward just a smidge with the legendary question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but this time in 2020 with all of your knowledge and experience, and there was no pandemic, what advice would you give to yourself?
Mm, wow. 25, huh? That would be pretty incredible. I would tell myself that to really think outside the box. Much of my life I keep moving forward, but I did it in a very well. I came out of the military. Now it's time to go to college now, and I got a traditional business degree, and then it's time to get a job, and then it was time to have children, and then it was time to, it just everything was moved forward, and everything was following the next kind of passion, but all within a relatively defined what I thought was available or appropriate, if that makes sense, right? When I was really little, I wanted to be an archaeologist. I just saw myself at the I just saw myself at the, with the pyramids in the background, digging in the sand and being an archaeologist. And but nobody ever told me I could be an archaeologist. And to a better point, I never asked, could I be an archaeologist? I guess I just assumed I couldn't, because how would I get there? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And now at 59, I'm like, damn it, I should have been an archaeologist, and I could have figured it out. Right. And so I would say if I was 25 again and there's no pandemic, or maybe at 59, I'll be an archaeologist. But I would say think bigger, think outside the box. And I really don't think that any dream is too wild or too unattainable. And I would tell myself to be an archaeologist, just go for it.
Ah, I love it. I can picture in the outfit too, especially with the shovel in hand, probably heck even one of the machetes if it's a jungle moment we have to go through the jungle. In this case, it'll be Ariel Jones instead of Indiana Jones.
I can see it, and maybe it still will be. Hey, you know what? I mean, I think I have a few good decades left in me, so stay tuned.
That's right, because 60 is the new 40 next year.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me that, yes, that is true. So, yeah. And the other thing that I realized is that actually I realized at 50 when I was kind of reinventing myself again, but pretty much every decade, almost to the nose, I made a really big life shift, whether I've gone back to school or changed my career or took the proverbial leap or whatever. And so now that I'm aware that I've been doing it, and I think it's just because after about 10 years of doing something, I feel kind of complete, or I see something else in the distance that I want to go towards. So who knows, Dom? Who knows? maybe I'll be digging in the sand next decade. You never know. I'll keep you posted.
Sweet. There we go. It's gonna be the Ariel with a selfie next to a pyramid. It's gonna be great. Uh,
Absolutely.
Woohoo! Well, definitely looking forward to it with all five eyes indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, alrighty. So for those who want to keep in magical contact with you, heck, even possibly work with you in the future because you do some fabulous work, you and Miss Meow herself, Kat Kanavos, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So sacredstoriespublishing.com is a good website to go to. Sacredstoriesmedia.com. We have two. A big announcement. We are doing a big website integration and rollout in the future. So if people are listening to the interview in the future, it would just be sacredstories.com. But right now, Sacred Stories Media or sacredstoriespublishing.com, and all the information's there. And yeah, definitely connect and definitely check out Crappy to Happy. Dom is in it, and so are 29 other incredible authors and their stories. It's a pretty great book, wouldn't you say, Dom?
Oh, yeah, especially with the pirate swag in your story with the eye patch.
Thank you for not asking me about that on air. I'll let people read. I'll let everybody read my miraculous eyesight cured story that's in Crappy to Happy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hope it gave you a laugh, though. I hope you gave it a laugh because when we decided on Crappy to Happy, I said I can see these as being kind of a little self-deprecating, where we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I was like, what story do I have that I could not take myself a little too seriously? And at the time it was happening, I was so mortified. I said, I'm never going to tell a soul this story. It's embarrassing beyond belief. And then now I've written it in a book. So, I think we can all laugh at ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. So folks already know which chapter to go to first, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So any parting words before we close up shop metaphorically, Ariel?
Well, this has been a joy. This has been a happy interview. I've enjoyed being on the receiving end, being one of your guests, Dom. And yeah, I would just encourage everybody to check out the book Crappy to Happy. And the reason that besides it's our new book and it's incredible, but because it really is filled with some beautiful, inspiring, heartbreaking, but also heart-opening stories. But it's our stories. It's the human story. And I think at this time, it's important. It's important that we can kind of come together, even through story, and receive support, receive inspiration, have a laugh or two, and just know that we're going to get through all this together. And so the book is Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy, and Dom's stories in it, my stories in it, and a number of other stories. So I encourage everyone to pick up a copy or two.
How's it going, you super special, awesome human? Since you made it to the end of this episode, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Since you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with at least 3 people in your network and tell them what you really liked about this episode. Heck, even shoot myself or the guest an email and let them know what you liked most about this interview so that way they can stay inspired to keep pushing out great work.